Roadshow News Recap starts right now. Honda is hard at work on a triad of next-generation SUVs. The automaker hinted that new versions of the HR-V, CR-V, and Pilot will launch this year, and we have all the details. Well, all the details there are, at least. Toyota could be borrowing an idea from electronics companies. In the future, it could offer remanufactured vehicles, used cars that have been brought back to like-new condition, and this is a very interesting idea. And finally, Chrysler is going all electric in the next few years, and this could include a minivan, or maybe not. Sean and I will fill you in on this story in a minute, plus a whole lot more. But first, happy Friday, everyone. Welcome back. It's good to be back in the groove of doing the show again. Had a nice long break to round out 2021, but here we are in 2022. We are back again, and Sean, as always, it's wonderful to see you.
It is good to be here again, Craig. So happy. Welcome to 2022. Welcome back to the Roadshow News channel. Hopefully all you viewers had a lovely New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, had fun, all that good stuff. But here we are with some really good topics to talk about again this week, Craig.
Absolutely. We're going to start off with Honda stuff, but before we dive into that, Sean, just a gentle reminder to you and everyone else to like and subscribe. Very gentle. Just please like and subscribe if you're feeling generous. But Honda 2022 sounds like it could be the year of the crossover.
No, it doesn't sound like it. That's what Honda called it. They said 2022 will be the year of the crossover. And they kind of kicked this announcement off with, teasers for the new HR-V, which Honda's SUV crossover lineup is frankly pretty stale at this point. So thank God, because the HR-V, the CR-V, and the Pilot are the three SUVs they'll be focusing on. And all three of them could really use some love. Maybe not so much the CR-V. The CR-V is still pretty good, but compared to a lot of new crossovers and SUVs coming out, the Hondas are definitely feeling a little stale, Craig.
Yeah, I've never actually driven an HR-V, but there's nothing about it that really impresses me. Yeah. It looks just completely ordinary. So
you can get a bang-and lease deal on an HR-V right now, and we're going to talk about new car prices. So an HR-V may be pretty attractive to people who desperately need a new car.
If you need a new car or you've just given up on life, you can drive an HR-V.
Yeah. Yes, but anyway, back to the new HR-V. Yes. The two teaser sketches, these aren't, final looks at what we're going to see. Things could be toned down when we see a production car, but we had some discussion here on the staff, and some people at first saw Ford Escape, and I could see that, but then somebody else brought up what was it? The CRZ? Was that what they rebrought the CRX back as?
I can't even. Oh, that was like the hybrid.
The little hybrid. Yeah, I kind of see some of that in the nose. Yes. Actually.
I could see where people say it looks like an Escape because of the high-mounted headlamps. They're kind of up near the hood. However, like the Escape's grill is a little bit wider and it's pointy on the ends, where this is sort of squared off. So I'm like, I don't see too much Escape there personally.
Yeah, but I actually think these sketches look really nice as we see the rear end here. Those taillights look very Accord Civic-like, very elegant. Honda's kind of been on a roll recently with kind of these cleaner, less jagged, expressive designs. And I kind of like that style a lot more than what we saw for the past few years from new Honda vehicles personally.
Definitely a cleaner, more elegant design. And I am all for that.
Yes. We know how Craig feels if you bring up Hyundai Kia design, that he thinks they're going to look like jagged, weird things in the next 8 years as they age.
Yes, they will. I promise.
Yes. But this one should be designed more specifically for the US or North America. Over in Europe, Honda already revealed a new HR-V, and they specifically said that vehicle was not coming to the US. So whatever we see here is going to be more specific to the US, perhaps all of North America. It could be wider seats, bigger cup holders, just because that typically appeases North American buyers compared to some things that Europeans look for instead. and it could have a hybrid powertrain. It would not be surprising to see the HRV go hybrid, or at least offer a hybrid
Mhm.
powertrain, because number one,
Yeah.
hybrid vehicles are kind of having a moment here in the US. At least sales are through the roof. Automakers are moving lots of hybrid vehicles. And number two, Honda's a little bit behind the eight ball when it comes to just kind of electrification in general, Craig.
Mhm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, a hybrid powertrain is a no-brainer. They could put a version of the powertrain you get in, like, the Insight or whatever into this. Be very interesting. Of course, they could also just use the Civic powertrains, which is just as safe a bet. So you've got the base
Yeah.
engine that's got about 158 horsepower, and then there's that 1.5 turbo with 180.
Hmm.
So, I mean, either of those, I mean, the turbo would be a pretty slick little engine in the HRV, because even as it is right now, it's quite underpowered. I think it has 141 horses, something like that, which is not a whole lot. So,
Yeah, and this will do battle with Toyota's freshly, whatever you want to call it, a new expansion of the Corolla nameplate, the Corolla Cross.
mm,
So, I mean, for decades we watched, Civic Corolla and, Camry Accord battle, whereas the market, as we know, has clearly shifted to SUVs and crossovers. So, HRV and Corolla Cross may be numbers to watch to see, who's going to come out on top with that. Um, the Corolla Cross is definitely a car. If the teasers end up previewing something just as good as what we see from the new HRV, and if the HRV kind of takes some interior style from the latest Civic, I think the HRV will be a more attractive subcompact crossover.
yep, I would agree. And of course, super excited to see the upcoming CRV and Pilot, because those are
Yes.
slated to come out this year as well. But
Yes.
no details to share, and barely any details about the HRV, because pretty much all we have are a couple sketches. So draw your own conclusions.
Haha, there's a pun. Draw. Pun.
There you go. Yes,
Sketches.
haha,
But
sketch your own conclusions. Didn't even
yes.
intend to do that, but there you go.
Creative.
What can I say? We already touched on Toyota, but let's move on to our next story, which is also about Toyota. They may be doing something that a lot of electronic manufacturers do. They're exploring the idea of selling refurbished cars. So you go down to your Apple store, you can get a refurb, whatever, MacBook or iPhone, save a good amount of money on a device that's pretty much basically like a new phone or computer.
Hmm.
And Toyota might be applying that to vehicles going forward. Apparently, they're sort of floating the idea in the UK. And this, if it all comes out, could be part of a new mobility sub-brand called Kinto. And I just said the M word that I hate, mobility. But it's a very interesting idea, because why not sell refurbished cars? Why not have a vehicle that comes in after a lease, or one that you trade in on a new vehicle, have that brought in, have it thoroughly checked out, inspected, reworked if necessary, and then sold again? Like, it could save people a lot of money when they go to get a new car, but it could also be better for the environment, because you're not remanufacturing everything. You're not extracting more ore and iron and all this. So what do you think, Sean? Would you drive a refurbished Toyota?
I tried to speak with Toyota USA about this, because this news originally broke from, like you said, Toyota UK, where they're in the very early stages of a program that's going to focus on the Toyota Corolla
Mm,
hatch and the Corolla Estate, which is the station wagon that they build in the UK. They wouldn't talk about if they could see this expanding to the US, but my God, does it feel like just a wonderful idea,
mm,
and just something that could really help a lot of people. Again, we're going to talk about this later, but I guess the topics kind of keep coming back to it.
yeah,
Help a lot of people who simply cannot afford a brand new car. Just these $550 a month car payments and all this stuff. Imagine if you could get basically that new car, but it's been back through the Toyota factory, refurbished, brought back up to par, that whatever quality bar it needs to meet, and then you sell it at a discounted price, and it's basically a brand new car. I think
yeah.
it's just a super smart, fantastic idea. Toyota also didn't talk about this Kinto sub mobility brand at all. So I don't know if they're looking to like have a fleet of these refurbished cars that you could then subscribe to, if it's going to be that kind of thing. But I think just the idea of perhaps reselling the cars as refurbished, I mean, could be wonderful. Take a 3-year or a 36-month lease that you do 10,000 miles on. Okay, so you sell a car with 28,000 miles on it after 3 years, and it's refurbished and basically brand new. That sounds like a fantastic idea amid a really crazy new car market.
I agree. I do have one question though. Like, you can go to your Toyota dealer or any dealer and get a certified used car where they supposedly have 125-point inspection and blah, 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 extra warranty, yada, yada. I wonder how much farther they would be going with a refurbished product than they would just like, certified used. I wonder what the difference might be.
Yeah, and that's why, there's not a lot of details, and and they stress this is very, very early. But I mean, they are literally talking about bringing a Corolla hatchback back to the factory, to like have it go back down the assembly line and just kind of pick and pluck what needs to be taken out, put new stuff in, so I don't know if that could be like, if we do this at scale on an assembly line, it makes more sense than having a technician at a dealership spend labor pulling apart bumpers or whatever it may be to get to what needs to be fixed, or even electronics, if those kinds of things, as cars have more screens, more chips, more computer run everything, it may make more sense to send it back down the assembly line. And interesting.
No,
go ahead, Craig.
Sorry. Oh, okay. I was just going to say that if they're sending it back to the factory, sending these cars to the factory, that implies they're going to do a lot more work than just your dealership checking things out and putting a label on it, certified used.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing that I was just going to say, Craig, is they're looking at building the car brand new and then perhaps adding 2 additional life cycles. So like that car goes back and gets refurbished. It goes for another life cycle, whatever Toyota would deem that to be. If it's like another subscription period, or it sits in a mobility fleet for 3 years, gets 25,000 miles put on it, and then it would go back to the factory again, get totally refurbished, and be basically a brand new car again. And then it would do it again. And then they said they would focus on how to sustainably recycle the car after that.
Yeah.
So this is a huge rethink about how do we treat new cars, because today it's you buy the car and then you're kind of free to, okay, you could sell it a year later and then get a new car, but this is really thinking about like, how can we be more responsible with the new cars that we build, and, keep people employed, because people need to be at the factory to build the cars or refurbish the cars or whatever they may be doing to it. And also still sell cars or have a revenue stream from a subscription service or mobility service, whatever it is. I think this is just a very interesting and cool idea that I'm excited to see what becomes of it. But it sounds like it's still years off from being anywhere close to being able to purchase or subscribe or rent whatever a refurbished Toyota.
Yeah. And this idea of refurbishing things obviously takes inspiration from the electronics business, but it is a well-established practice in the auto business as well, because you go to replace an engine or a transmission or an alternator in your car. You go down to your local auto parts store, you buy that alternator, and there's something on it that's called a core charge. So you pay $150 for the new alternator, which is not actually new, but it's been rebuilt. It's been remanufactured, basically brought back to like new condition. So you take this remanufactured alternator, you install it in your car, you take the old alternator back to the auto parts store, and they give you $40 back for what's known as the core charge. So they take that used alternator, it gets sent out and gets completely torn apart, cleaned, new bearings, new electronics, everything. And they remanufacture it, and then they sell it to the next person down the road. So and they do the same with engines and transmissions, all of that stuff. So this is not necessarily a new idea, but it's a great way to save money, be better for the environment. Because when you look at something like an alternator, even if it's bad, there's still a whole lot of that assembly that gets reused and can be reused. So it only makes sense. Clean it up, check it, make sure it's good, and send it on down the line to the next person. So yeah, could be a great idea for Toyota. I'd be very interested to see what they do with this going forward. But anyway, if you're feeling generous, give the Roadshow News YouTube channel a like and subscribe, or I should say like this video and subscribe to the Roadshow YouTube channel. Every little bit helps, and we do appreciate it very, very much. Chrysler, though, they are aiming to go all electric. I mean, they're a dead brand driving right now, but they want to be all electric by 2028, and they've got some interesting plans.
Yes. Last week was CES, and that is where Chrysler kind of planted a flag and said, we're going all electric by 2028, which that's a long time away. And the CEO spoke about what these plans include. And what they focused on was the Airflow SUV concept. But what was more interesting was she mentioned an electric minivan.
Mm-hmm.
And Chrysler being one of the brands that really brought the minivan to life decades ago, could it potentially be that, Craig, I think once upon a time we talked about what is Chrysler's thing. They used to have all these draws and core competencies that they were just like something ahead of GM or Ford, where it's like now it's like, why do you go look at now a Stellantis vehicle, like what are they doing?
Ram and Jeep. That's all people care about.
Right. Like what are they doing better at, like Dodge and Chrysler? I mean, like maybe you could argue Dodge is okay because they kind of are super focused on a niche that is V8 powered muscle cars, and people who can't do a V8, they swing a V6, they think it's cool. Awesome. But Chrysler, like you said, has been a dead brand, driving, walking, whatever, for it feels like at least 10 years. And hopefully this all EV push can reinvigorate them. And what she said about an electric minivan was they kind of want to look at it and say, we don't want to do a Pacifica with a battery pack. So it's, we shouldn't expect what you see rolling here on the screen just with a battery pack and, larger range, et cetera, et cetera. They said they kind of want to take a rethink approach and toss out that, I'm using quotes or air quotes, soccer mom stigma that they feel is outdated, and perhaps approach it as maybe the minivan becomes a multi-purpose vehicle.
What's funny to me, though, is this quote-unquote soccer mom derisive term is now literally just applied to any crossover vehicle, because that's what families use to transport their broods, not minivans anymore. Minivans are regrettably don't sell very well. They're better for the purpose, but
I don't know,
gone full circle in a way.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who has more than one child that thinks their crossover or SUV does better performing at what they need in their lives as a family than a minivan. Like, I bet with one kid, sure, you could swing it because you just got your car seat there in the second passenger row. Cool. If you're talking more than one child, like with the space and what you need to do, it's like there is nothing better than a minivan with sliding doors, and it's easy to get back into that third row. It just, nothing does it better than the minivan. And I've said for a while, I don't understand why automakers think that minivan is such a dirty term or something like that. Like Kia is a good example that as they rolled out the new Carnival, they never called it a minivan or a van. They called it an MPV, a multi-purpose vehicle, and it's supposed to look more like an SUV, but it's like, guys, anyone with a set of eyes knows that's a minivan. Like,
it's got sliding doors. It's a big box on wheels just because you raise the hood a little bit.
And but you know what? It's a fantastic looking minivan at that too. Like, who cares? I think the Pacifica is a great looking minivan. But yeah, to your point, crossovers are just the new soccer mom mobile, because it's just the standard piece of transportation that families really use. But honestly, minivans do it 10 times better. And I think if Chrysler can look at the minivan as one of their competencies and move into EVs and really put something special together, like, who knows where we are in, say, 2028, but like, could that serve as a basis for advanced driver assistance technologies, some sort of autonomous system. If we're looking at pod cars and bubbles or something like that,
Yeah.
like it seems like an opportunity for Chrysler to kind of take what they've learned with those old vinyl wood paneled minivans
Yeah.
and just kind of reinvent it.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like they're going to have an electric minivan in the Chrysler lineup, but also the brand CEO mentioned 2 other electric SUVs. And if I read the story correctly, aside from the Airflow, of course, is the concept they unveiled at CES. We have a separate video of that on the main Roadshow YouTube channel, so please do check that out. So they could be going from having 2 products now, one minivan, the Pacifica, and the 300, which is a very outdated sedan, to having an electric minivan, possibly keeping the Pacifica around. Well, no, if they're going all electric, they would have an electric minivan / MPV, 2 SUVs, and maybe the Airflow. So maybe they're going to have 4 different vehicles by 2028. We'll see. That can't be bad for them.
No,
and more products to sell.
Yes. And we talked about this in the past, Craig, but when the Fiat Chrysler and PSA Group merger occurred and Stellantis became a thing, the higher ups gave Dodge and Chrysler a decade to be like, we need to see what you want to do, execute it, and then prove your worth sticking around.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine your local whatever Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler, Ram dealer is banking on selling those Pacificas to keep their franchise in business. Like they're worried about moving Wranglers and Grand Cherokees and Ram 1500s and maybe some big dollar Challengers and Chargers.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, it's just like as an aside, the whole Stellantis concern is just confusing to me. Like, you had a complicated arrangement already with Fiat and Chrysler. That's difficult to manage right there. Not just because they're 2 different companies with 2 different philosophies, right? But their vehicles are so different, and the systems and the manufacturing processes, it's all separate. And now you're bringing in a whole other automotive group on top of that. So it's just, they have 14 brands. There's a million ways they could fail. I hope they don't, but there's just so much going on.
Yeah, I think this decade we'll see. I think it's going to shake things out. If something needs to go, it's going to go this decade, because I specifically really look at Chrysler, Alfa Romeo, Maserati, and Fiat. And I guess even in Lancia, because like it feels like there's so much, not all of them overlap with one another. But then as I think of that, I'm like, oh, but also Opel, because Opel kind of reminds me of like a Fiat or something like that.
And then they have, Peugeot, and then the DS sub-brand.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that was a point a lot of people made when this was going through, is like, what's going to become of all of these brands? And I know I've seen some things from Stellantis saying like, well, Opel is our only German brand. And, there's a thing about like a positive stigma people have about buying a German vehicle. Okay, I can get that. And then there's the whole thing about there was plans to bring Peugeot here to the US, but I believe I saw that market research saw that Americans weren't really keen on buying a French car.
They weren't keen on buying Fiats. That was a catastrophe.
I mean, exactly. So what they decided to do instead was put their eggs into the Chrysler basket. And now I think that's why we're seeing the investment in Chrysler, because it's a US brand. It has a storied history. People know Chrysler, either, they're diehard, they love it, from, imported from Detroit kind of things, or they have terrible connections with it because they had a junker from the 90s. Like,
exactly.
People know Chrysler for better or worse.
Yes. It's also very interesting too, because from the parts commonality standpoint, you're bringing in PSA, which is its whole separate thing. And you've got Opel, which used to be part of GM, right?
Yeah.
So they conceivably are still using GM components in some vehicles.
Yeah.
Then you've got Fiat. Then you've got Chrysler, the traditional American Chrysler stuff. And then you've got still components that are left over from the Daimler Chrysler days. You get in some vehicles, you still have those old Mercedes window switches and stuff.
Yeah.
See, this is this pantheon of different parts. And like, how do you commonize all that? going forward without just killing vehicle names, just killing vehicles. Like, I don't know how you do it. It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It sounds like everyone inside of the automaker has a lot of work cut out for them in the next in the next 5 to 10 years is what I would answer to that, because it's true. Just it's kind of just all over the map. And hopefully we see each brand and division find its voice or its lane, so to speak, so that it can stick around. For years we were hoping to get Alfa Romeo back in the US, and it happened. And, but it's kind of a put up or shut up kind of thing. It's like, okay, guys, it's here. You got to buy the cars if you want them to stick around, or else I could easily see Stellantis being like, oh, we're not going to sell Alfa Romeo here, and we'll just sell Maserati or neither, whatever.
It's just like Ford used to have 3 divisions: Ford, Mercury, and Lincoln. And 10, 12 years ago, they dropped Mercury because all they were redecorated Fords. Yep. And the money they were spending coming up with new bumpers and grills and headlight designs or whatever and logos they took that and plowed that into their other products. So now you've got mass market and luxury, Ford and Lincoln. Very simple. Yeah. So how you do that with 14 different automotive brands? Like there's going to be a reckoning, I think.
But boy, do we miss
it's sustainable.
The Mercury Mariner.
Oh yes, or the
Mountaineer.
Mountaineer, or the Mercury Nautica edition.
The Sable.
Sable. No, what was the minivan that was based on the Nissan Quest? The Mercury Villager. The Villager.
Oh, yes.
That's what it was. Yep. You can get the Nautica edition. So
I forgot about that, but yes.
It's good that you did.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
But before we wrap up the show, we're nearly at the end. One very quick news hit here.
Yes.
New cars are expensive. That's not surprising to anyone. But the pandemic is significantly exacerbating this problem. According to KBB, the average new vehicle transaction price is nearly 50 grand. 50 grand.
Wild.
According to them, to our friends at KBB, it was $47,077 in December 2021. That is a year-over-year increase of nearly $6,000. So now is not the time to buy a car.
Yeah,
new or used.
That is the big takeaway from that data that was released this week. It's not really a plus side or a silver lining, but I'm going to say silver lining is that the reason it rose so much in December was luxury vehicle sales were extremely strong, like stronger than the people who crunched these numbers thought they would be. So it pushed the average price up much higher. If you take luxury vehicle sales out, the average transaction price was still about $43,000. So I'm saying you need to take Lincoln, Acura, Mercedes, all of these luxury brands out of the equation, and then your average Chevy, Ford, Honda, Toyota, all of that pressed together was still around $43,000. So it's a chunk off the final average price, but it's still an astronomical amount of money.
Automakers are just going to be pricing drivers out of the market. What working class person could drop 50 grand on a new car? That's crazy. Or a 96-month financing. Who wants to pay for something for 8 years? It's not going to be worth anything by the time you're done paying it off.
It's really, the market is effed. Like that's just like the way I would put it. Is it's really in a really crazy place where there is strong consumer demand for new cars still. But dealers have no inventory. Mm-hmm. There's very little supply actually being built. So the cars that are on the way that dealers are now pre-selling people aren't coming until March or April. So people are putting down deposits on cars that are stickered $3,000 or so over MSRP. I believe on average, KBB said the typical consumer spent at least about $1,000 over MSRP on their new vehicle in December 2021. That is just wild that consumers are just prepared to pony up prices that are beyond MSRP. I can't swallow that. I just think that is crazy, but I understand if sometimes you need a new car. And then unfortunately the people who are can't pay for that, they go to a used car, and then this is how we end up with 2019 model year vehicles with 28,000 miles that are going for $32,000 because it's just absurdity.
Yep. And on that high note, we're going to wrap the show up. Moral of the story,
Woo!
kids, don't go and buy a car right now.
Yeah,
You can
don't.
wait, do it. But
Bad time.
thank you so much, Sean, for helping with the show, and of course the rest of the team that makes Roadshow News Recap possible. And of course, thank you for watching, where we dissect and discuss the most important automotive stories of the past week. I hope you enjoyed the show and have a great weekend.